This is Foster Perry, and this is Golden Hummingbird Medicine. Many years ago, on a vision quest that I had done in Wyoming in the mountains, I was on the top of a mountain overlooking a huge valley that a friend of mine, a Lakota medicine woman, that she was the caretaker of this property. And while I was there in my vision quest, the main animal that came was a horse. But it wasn't just any horse, it was a wild horse that could never be tamed or trained. And that wild horse came every day of my vision quest and was gentle, came always to the circle, always greeted me, and I understood its medicine. In another vision quest, which many shamans do, you go into a cave of the ancestors. And in these caves, and many tribes have sacred caves, you will go in for one night for 24 hours. First you have to take the long journey down the cave. It has to be totally black at night. And in that darkness, you will do a series of things where you invoke the true animal power. That animal power that comes in that cave at night is like a stampede. You hear the animals coming. This is after long silences of waiting. And when they come, it may not be one stampede, it may be different animals, it may be buffalo, but when they come through that cave, you hear the sound. You cannot see anything. And in that blackness, in that silence, with a clear intention, awake, the animals in that moment, you understand their power and our communication with them. Almost as if you can see through their eyes. You can talk with them and know them. Something that happened long before human beings and animals could not communicate with each other so freely. But there was a time when we had that tremendous connection and power. And that's what happens in that cave. But that's not the only thing. After that power, and it goes through you, really like a stampede of energy, so strong, you're healed. You don't have pain in your body. You feel completely healed. And then later on in the cave, a woman comes. You just notice her, you feel her, or you see her. And this woman, most men think she's tempting them. But when you're in these ancient caves, it is an old woman's power that comes. And she gives you her name, which is the power. And she talks with you, and many men, they don't understand it. Sometimes she's Lilith, sometimes she's Hecate. She's a more ancient goddess. And if you embrace her in that darkness, like many people do at a crossroad, when you go where two roads intersect, or two pathways in the forest, or they make a Y, and you stay there at midnight to 3 a.m. in the morning, before the sunrise, same idea as the cave, and you wait there for the spirit of the crossroads to come, whatever you call them, Elegua, Eshu, or Hecate, the spirit of the crossroads. And this also happens in the cave. The first time I met Lilith, or Hecate. Hecate at a crossroad, Lilith in a cave. For Lilith often is in caves. And men always thought she was somehow sabotaging their vision quest, but she's not. She's the final realization and power after the animals. she comes. And if you take that power into you, that meeting, it is complete, full, and stays with you all your life, and you never tell others what truly happened or the power the animals gave you. In a crossroad, when you're waiting at midnight, 3 a.m., and you have given an offering, always you must give an offering. Spirits also are guests in your house, and you must feed them. And whenever you have a guest in your home, there must always be some sort of exchange. How would you treat a guest? Would you try to command them and be cruel to them? Would you say, oh, you're horrible, you're just an illusion, because you're a spirit? Or would you treat them with honor and respect and dignity? Because only when you do that, in that offering, with that respect, do they truly come and there is a conversation, there's an exchange of knowledge and of knowing and of seeing. In my own life, I had a vision quest in a cave with a lion, a mountain lion. It wasn't dark. It was just a mountain lion waiting for its partner. And so I sat in a cave singing to a lion. And what was exchanged between us was a tremendous feeling, a tremendous understanding of the loneliness of that lion that was my own loneliness for its mate. And that song changed my life. And that is how I met the person that I ended up staying with for the rest of my life. How many gifts animals have given us through their conversations, through remembering them, like entering into a rainforest and not being separate. Or knowing Takashla, Watatanka, the great nothing, to know the void intimately. To face our own difficulties, then, is also to face our own anger and our rage. The anger that has to do with feeling a lack of control in a moment, which is also an illusion, because you're always responsible for your life. Everything you do, you say, you feel is your responsibility. You are responsible and you cannot blame. There is a great honor in taking full self-responsibility all your life without projecting onto someone else or believing that somebody else is always the cause of your problems. We always create more and more problems in our lives in order to learn. There are many ways to learn without creating problems. And there are many ways in which we create pain because of our control issues. Our need to control others, our need to control situations, and all the melodrama around control. In that sense, that manipulation that we see all around us, the crossing of our honor through the crossing of our boundaries. When our boundaries are crossed too many times, something ferocious is unleashed in us. Something that feels violated, that feels ruined, raped, and disempowered. And that part of us is an animal too. So in shamanism, when we face this animal that has been thrown away when we were children and we want to be accepted by our parents, so there's one part of us that is loving and accepted, there's another part of us that gets rejected because of social norms. And the part of us that gets rejected always creates a duality in us. There's always an empowered person and there's a disempowered one. So no matter how many affirmations you do, no matter what is in your subconscious mind, in that duality you must, on some level, discreate it. And how do you do that? If you created it, you can discreate anything you create. So with an animal, that part of you that gets rejected, that's full of rage, imagine how many people, Indians, indigenous people, gay people, transgender people, so many people, women, disempowered men, have divided themselves because they don't fit in. There's no place for them. There's no opportunity because of what they are, their nature, their essence. So when we split up a part of ourselves, that part of ourselves, when it's backed into a corner, is a very ferocious animal. And that animal in a corner wants blood. So I often say, instead of taking revenge on somebody else, do it inside. When I first met Christos, one of the first things he said is he can kill people inside. He would never do it outside. Outside, anyway, is an illusion to kill somebody. No one ever really dies. But inside of you, to get back the power that you lost in shamanism, you go to a place inside where you destroy that person, or you hurt that person, or whatever you do to them, in order to one purpose, to unleash back the power that you lost, that you gave away. Because you believe somebody else is the leader of your life, you believe that somebody else is responsible for what happened. Whenever you give your power away to someone else, or they cross your boundaries so many times that you're like that ferocious animal that's backed into a corner. And in its own cruelty, we have to feed it with something else than our own anger and rage only. It's already known that. We give it meat, whether it's a panther or whatever predator it is inside of us. And that animal, that jaguar, black panther, or whatever it is, that cat, when it is ferocious, backed into a corner, and raging, I feed it. And once in a while I let it go and internally go after that person that is wronging me. There are people who create things out of shadows with their hands. Even in a car parking lot, I watched a friend of mine make a shadow. And then I gave that shadow life as an illusion so that someone would not follow them through the parking lot. They made an animal out of little shadows in their hands. And then they gave it life. And it protected them. And it is the same thing with this animal in the corner. Once we feed it, once we listen to it, once we understand how hurt it's been, how put down, how beaten up, how defiled and abused it's been, how it hasn't been listened to, how disempowered it has felt. Because people cross their boundaries so many times, and it could not protect you, this animal. I think that's the animal's greatest pain. And so when you listen to it, and you hear it, and you understand that it is your protector, then something amazing happens. That cruel animal, that angry, festering animal, goes before you when you walk. It becomes your boundary protector. And whenever I walk somewhere, and whether I'm with a giant lion or I'm with my black panther, people know to stay away because they sense my protector animal around me. Of course, if you want always your boundaries to be open and you want to experience everything that's around you, there's no judgment of that. But I don't want somebody to touch me inappropriately. I don't want somebody to violate my space in a cruel way. I don't want to give my power to someone. And that animal, when it's just a few feet in front of me, walking before me, protecting me, and once in a while I let it go out and attack somebody in the inner plane, to teach that person a lesson and to free the energy of manipulation, of somebody who believed they could control me, which will only cause them pain. For pain is always control. Controlling somebody outside of you. It's always some form of a control issue. Pain. Always trying to either manipulate or control life around you, or the illusion around you. Sometimes that leads to the joints, the bones, everything hurting, the shaking. So, inside of this is always a duality. Disempowerment and empowerment. Once I have the clear boundaries and I have this animal in front of me, no matter how many affirmations I do, no matter how much light or clarity or strength I want, there's always going to be its opposite. So by bringing the two polarities together, the two emotions are never bad. They are the true power. Stronger than thought. Emotion. And when we accept our emotions and let this anger sometimes to come out, to at least be felt, it helps us to become as assertive as that animal. Because anger was always to teach us to be assertive, to finally stand in our own power. And the animal doesn't want us just to use it in a way that we'll lose a lot of our energy just by getting angry, because once you get too angry, of course, you're going to lose tremendous energy. When you're trying to establish your boundaries because you think other people are just using cheap kind of anger to get at you. It's always cheap to disempower others by trying to control them and using the anger to control somebody. But one of the most important things is not to avoid responsibility. Because trust is when you wake up in the morning because you want to get up and you want to do something positive that day. You want to learn something that day. You want to grow, because that's what makes life fun, right? This interconnection with all of life and to know nature. That's what is fun. Trust is not the avoidance of responsibility. And when we avoid too much responsibility, of course we control. So it's not about following the leader. That's not really trust. No. Everybody has a certain kind of leader inside. And it's not about don't let me down kind of manipulation that people often do. Don't let me down. Or the guilt we feel when we say we're going to do something and then we don't do it. Then we have no one else to blame. So what I am getting to is trust is something else. It is responsibility. It's not just to let people walk all over you. That's not what trust is. Trust requires intuition. Trust requires competence. Though I embrace every emotion and I feel them, I understand that to be genuine with trust, to genuinely be positive, at least 51%. That is what we need in life. We need to learn to trust again. So when I was in that cave and it was totally black and these animals were rushing, I completely trusted them. And myself. And I didn't feel that I was out of control because I'm responsible for my life. How can I be out of control? I felt so connected in that darkness before creation. And I remembered in that moment what trust is. Years before, I had had an experience of Kundalini, which is something was rushing up my spine. My whole body was shaking and tingling, and I could hear bells inside of me, sounds inside of me, but thousands, millions of bells. and they were coming out of my ears. The sound wasn't outside, it was from inside. And I heard all these inner sounds, and I felt so clean afterwards and completely healed. So in balance. And that has never left me to this day, nor has the animals rushing me in that cave has ever left me. And I have been true to all these great ancient goddesses and gods that live in those caves or that blackness. And I'm not afraid of them, or afraid of that wild animal in the corner. Give it its meat, give it something to eat. And let it go before you, and let it be your protector. This is Foster Perry, and this is Golden Hummingbird.